Welcome to the vlog, y'all. This video is a video that I've wanted to make for a long time. This is going to be part 1 of 2 of a series on small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, usually abbreviated to SIBO. I was diagnosed with SIBO in March of 2022. I had to do an initial baseline breath, and then I had to drink this sugar and water solution that tasted kind of like watered down toothpaste. And that's the machine that they use to measure my breath. The numbers at the beginning were really low, and then the test that we just did, which is the second to last test, the nurse was like, oh my god, and I was like. In February of 2023, I had a follow-up SIBO test and it showed that I no longer had SIBO. So I had SIBO for a long period of time and I cured my SIBO. And this series is going to talk about the symptoms that SIBO caused me, the specific SIBO symptoms that I had. And then part 2 of this series is going to talk about how I cured my SIBO. So the main reason why I think it's really important to share the SIBO symptoms that I had is because the SIBO symptoms that I had ended up being really different from symptoms that I heard about associated to SIBO. Anyone that I had talked to kind of in my friend group who had SIBO always mentioned having a lot of gas in the form of farts, diarrhea, a lot of bowel urgency, in addition to the bloating and some nausea and things like that. And I personally didn't have any diarrhea or any gas with my SIBO. A lot of my SIBO symptoms were upper GI focused, and I did not expect that at all. And so I want to talk about that here in case any of y'all are having a lot of upper GI symptoms, because I did not think that I could have had SIBO before I found out that I had it based on my symptoms, because my symptoms were so different from people that I had talked to who had SIBO. And I think it's a motility issue. I don't think I have SIBO. And then additionally, I had some SIBO symptoms that I had never heard about that were not even gastrointestinal. I had so many non-gastrointestinal SIBO symptoms that affected me so deeply. And I feel as though the non-gastrointestinal side of SIBO symptoms gets so little discussion. I don't think most people realize, including doctors and maybe especially doctors, how broadly SIBO can affect people and by extension their patients beyond the gastrointestinal tract. My referral for the SIBO test was only because I had extreme bloating.
Are you gazing upon the tumbling?
Yes, I am. It's rock hard.
Oh, jeez.
Should we measure it? I don't even need to lift up my shirt to show you. You can see the bloat.
But I had so many other SIBO symptoms that my doctor didn't even really see as SIBO symptoms. Yeah, so let's get into it. I'm gonna first talk about the gastrointestinal symptoms and then get into the non-gastrointestinal symptoms. The gastrointestinal SIBO symptoms that I had, I've been able to narrow them down based on the symptoms that I had when I got diagnosed with SIBO and the symptoms that I no longer have. Because as a lot of you guys know, if you follow my channel, I still have 2 chronic GI disorders. I have a stomach disorder that causes me to have nausea, vomiting, and pain, and then I have an intestinal disorder that causes my colon to be extremely slow and for me to have chronic constipation that I have to manage. And so the symptoms associated to my 2 other disorders are not symptoms that I'm going to discuss that were only related to my SIBO, because now that I've been SIBO free for about 6 or 7 months, I now can understand clearly what symptoms I no longer have and what were definitely SIBO symptoms and SIBO symptoms only. So as far as gastrointestinal, obviously I had bloating.
Rock freaking solid. Yeah, it is a lot of bloat. And it's rock hard. It stays this stretched.
I had the extreme SIBO bloating that made it look like I was pregnant.
Huge right now. These pants this is how it is every night too. I just look so pregnant and it's so hard and distended. But then when I turn to the side, oh my lord.
And honestly, what made the SIBO bloating really different from any other bloating that I've ever experienced, and I feel like this is a pretty universal experience for people that have had a SIBO diagnosis, is I would get extremely bloated from only a couple of bites of food, or even after only drinking a drink that triggered my SIBO in some way. A lot of times I would have kombucha in the morning. Don't come for me in the comments about how that's not good for SIBO. I didn't follow a certain diet to cure my SIBO, and that'll be discussed in the next video. and I cured it. So, you know, people do a lot of different things when they have SIBO, and not everyone follows a strict diet. But anyway, so I would have kombucha in the mornings, and then kombucha does have a lot of FODMAPs in it, so I would get extremely bloated, pregnancy-looking bloating from just, you know, kombucha, which was kind of crazy to me at the time. And if I had any food at all in the mornings, I would get super, super bloated. I am really, really bloated, and I just feel disgusting, like, 'cause I'm just so bloated. And I haven't eaten anything since 1 p.m. and what I ate at 1 p.m. was a peanut butter cup and some kombucha. I didn't eat like a meal. So I haven't really had a meal all day. I've just had like protein bars. And at the peak of my SIBO being the absolute worst, I would wake up super bloated and then go to bed even more bloated, but I was never not bloated. It is Wednesday morning, and I just want to report that my stomach is still huge and bloated from yesterday. And SIBO bloating feels so different from other types of bloating because it is just so extreme. Like, I still get bloated now because of my stomach disorder and my slow intestines, and a lot of times if I get constipated, I will get bloated. But the SIBO bloating was just a whole other level that I think only people that have had SIBO can really relate to. It just felt like everything in my abdomen hurt. It was stretched to its absolute max. The skin was stretched to its max. It was hard to breathe. It hurt so much. Like, SIBO bloating is a whole other level. So obviously I had that symptom, but then I also had burping. Burping was a super, super prominent SIBO symptom that I feel like is not talked about and not well known by doctors. The burping, I just keep burping and then it's so hard to film. Like, how can my gut being bad affect so much? SIBO is so upper GI focused. Belching, so much belching. It makes a lot of sense to me that because of the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, a lot of gas is produced. And that is what causes the bloating. That gas has to go somewhere. And so all the gas that was produced for me came out upper GI instead of lower GI. So instead of having a lot of farting that I've heard people with SIBO experience, I had almost no farting at all, which makes sense because I have slow intestinal motility and chronic constipation. So there's not a whole lot moving in my colon. So all of the gas that was produced with my SIBO was coming out of my mouth. So, no, kind of gross, but I was burping constantly. I was burping so much that it was hard to get through a sentence without burping. And it wasn't always audible, but like I was always just like, ugh, like just always burping. And now that I've cured my SIBO, I burp a normal human amount, which is amazing. I still burp more than I fart because that's just kind of how my body is, but I'm not burping constantly the way I used to be, which is awesome. So we got bloating, we got burping, acid reflux. And then I've had some heartburn and some acid reflux throughout the day. Was a huge SIBO symptom for me that I no longer have. I will have reflux occasionally now if I eat foods that don't agree with me or if I'm having a really bad vomiting episode. But when I had SIBO, I would have near constant acid reflux. Then like throughout the whole afternoon, I kept like having a lot of acid reflux, and like I thankfully did not throw up, but I had a lot of close calls, so I have not been feeling very good. My reflux was so bad that if I ate anything, I would be tasting it like 20 times within an hour of eating it just through reflux. And my throat, I had a sore throat a lot of the time because of acid reflux. And there were times when I'd have a lot of reflux when I slept, and then I would wake up and my throat would just be sore and it would be hard to talk just from all the reflux that was happening while I slept. Is that my throat just gets destroyed and it's just so painful. I hate it. I will say this in this video and in the next one, but I do not think that my SIBO just appeared one day, and my SIBO definitely didn't just go away one day. My SIBO developed over time slowly and kind of came to a peak and then started to heal, but it healed slowly. And so these symptoms eased slowly and they developed slowly and kind of came to a peak. I had acid reflux for a couple of years, but it was just getting worse and worse and worse until my SIBO diagnosis. And now that my SIBO is cured, I almost never have acid reflux. So bloating, burping, reflux. I think those are really the main GI symptoms that I had. So the other kind of interesting thing about my lower intestinal kind of symptoms is the type of SIBO that I was diagnosed with was the hydrogen dominant SIBO. And normally, kind of the conventional wisdom is that hydrogen dominant SIBO will have diarrhea as a symptom. If you look deeper into the research, you'll see that it's a lot more nuanced than methane SIBO causing constipation and hydrogen SIBO causing diarrhea. But I do want to point out that even though I had the hydrogen dominant type, I did not have diarrhea ever the entire time that I had SIBO. Not ever. And I did have to do certain phases of laxative treatments because of my chronic intestinal disorder. So there were times when taking a ton of laxatives caused diarrhea, but I never had it on its own. I never had it unless I was taking a ton of laxatives for other medical things that I was doing. And so I do think it's important for me to point out that even if you have methane dominant or if you have hydrogen dominant, that doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of symptoms. Symptoms can be really varied and different regardless of what kind of SIBO that you have. And that's part of why I'm making this video. Another thing I want to point out is the small intestine is big and there's a lot of feet of small intestine. So one of the things that I've been curious about, if like the bacterial overgrowth was higher up in my intestines, and maybe that's why I had more upper GI problems from it, we'll never know the answer to that question, but that is something that I wonder is if people that have worse upper GI issues from SIBO, if maybe their bacteria is higher up, but I'll never know the answer to that question because there is no way to test it. That is the rundown on my gastrointestinal symptoms from SIBO: bloating, burping, and reflux. As far as non-gastrointestinal symptoms, these were the worst with SIBO. These are symptoms that I thankfully no longer have, and I was not able to see how bad the non-gastrointestinal symptoms were until I got rid of the SIBO and until I watched some of my old vlogs and saw the kinds of things I was talking about.
I want to report that I really don't feel good. I just want this to stop, and it never stopped. I just feel like crap. But I'm just so weak and fatigued and emotionally drained from this. Just like my brain fog is so bad. I feel so spacey. My legs are shaking. Because I vlogged, a lot of my journey with SIBO. Some of the things I was talking about, I'm like, wow, I was really, really affected non-gastrointestinally by SIBO. I think a lot of people don't realize that SIBO can affect the entire body in a lot of really profound ways. These are my 4 non-gastrointestinal symptoms that I had from SIBO. And the first one is sort of adjacent to gastrointestinal, but it is more of like an emotional symptom. So I had really, really intense sugar cravings when I had SIBO. Such intense sugar cravings. And it actually led to weight gain. I gained 10 to 15 pounds post SIBO diagnosis. At the beginning of 2022, I weighed a lot closer to what I weighed now. I weighed about 115 pounds. I'm currently 110, but I weighed 115 at the start of 2022. And by May and June of 2022, I weighed 130 pounds. So I gained 15 pounds from eating tons of sugar and being really sedentary. Demolishing more fruits. I want to eat cake and cookies because of these other symptoms I'm going to get into. And also part of what led kind of a weird feedback loop with the sugar cravings was I felt like, and rightfully, that healthful foods and lower sugar foods such as vegetables, fruits, legumes made my bloating worse. Obviously they did because those are really high FODMAP foods. A lot of those, and a lot of the ones I was eating were high FODMAP foods. And so a lot of healthful foods, because they made my bloating worse and caused, all this lower abdominal pain from how bad the bloating was, I didn't want to eat those foods because they made my symptoms worse. And then on top of that, I had these sugar cravings. So I was just like, okay, I feel like the only foods I can eat are sugary foods and sugary drinks because everything else, just hurts so much with the bloating. And I remember even trying to do the low FODMAP diet, it was torturous to me because I was just craving sugar constantly. And even though plain table sugar is low FODMAP, and a lot of the candies that I was eating were technically low FODMAP, which might explain why they weren't causing me as many symptoms, the low FODMAP diet overall is also supposed to be IBS friendly, and so therefore it's supposed to be low sugar. But like any higher sugar, low FODMAP things, for like the month that I was on that diet, again, more about that in the next video, I was just looking for them because I crave sugar. Definitely the hardest part of this diet so far is the cravings. I love candy, I love ice cream, and I usually eat it most days. I can really tell when my sugar cravings stopped because my sugar cravings stopped almost overnight, honestly. That was the quickest symptom to go away. And this was around October and November, but I just remember going from wanting to eat sugar constantly all day and any kind of sugary foods I get my hands on to being totally fine with eating a bowl of vegetable soup and then just going about my day not having a sugary dessert or a sugary snack or anything. And it was amazing how that changed and how all of a sudden I could go days without having sugar.
whereas previously a day without sugar was torturous. So that was interesting, and I classified as non-gastrointestinal because it was more sort of emotional, it felt to me. So we got sugar cravings. Next one I want to talk about is brain fog. I can barely think, my vision is blurred. Like, I feel so bad, like just so weak. So I had such bad brain fog that it was so hard for me to do even simple tasks. And I was really lucky at the time that my coworkers, I work at a different job now than the one I had when I had SIBO, but my coworkers knew about my health issues. They were super understanding, and also my workload at that time wasn't super intense, so I could get tasks done, you know, slowly, which was very helpful because it was just so hard to think through things. It was hard to even make vlogs. Everything just took so long because of my brain fog.
I'm very glad that it's Friday. I'm exhausted. I feel awful, like complete brain fog. Like, I feel like my brain has been like super overexerted, but I haven't really overexerted it that much. I could barely function at work. I could barely get any work done. My coworker had to help me a lot. It's a complete brain fog. I'm just out of it.
And I just remember feeling so spaced out. And at the time, I contributed the brain fog to not eating enough. But then when I went back and tracked my calories that I was eating from when I had SIBO, I was eating a lot of calories. Now, a good amount of those calories were coming from carbs and sugar, but I was eating plenty of calories. So the brain fog was not from not eating enough calories. The brain fog was from the SIBO and all the bacteria overgrowing my small intestine. And yeah, when I watched the old vlog that I made in 2022 while I had SIBO, I just talked so much in those vlogs about feeling spaced out and not being able to think clearly. And I remember that just so much, just how thinking through things was just incredibly difficult. So if anyone you know has SIBO, be kind to them, just in all areas of their life, because it is a lot harder for people that have SIBO brain fog to get things done. It's just so hard. And which leads me into the last two symptoms kind of go together. So I'm going to talk about those together. I had extremely intense fatigue and I had extremely intense muscle weakness. I just feel so sick and weak and just awful. So I'm just laying in bed. This might be what I do all day. I don't know. I really don't feel good. I have been struggling a lot with my energy, feeling so depleted, like it's hard to walk around, to hold my head up, hard to focus. Even holding my camera right now, my arm really hurts. Like, every ounce of my body feels so exhausted, and that's really frustrating. Again, at the time, I thought that the fatigue and the muscle weakness was because I was struggling to eat enough. But again, when I went back and tracked my calories that I was eating while I had SIBO, I was eating fairly good amount of calories. Now, I will say that I was not eating more than 2,000 calories a day. I was probably eating about 1,800 calories a day for the period that I was gaining weight, like 800 to 1,900 calories a day. I made a whole video about calories, so if you want to watch that and see exactly what I was eating while I had SIBO and like how many calories I was eating, that video will be linked below because I made a whole video about calories, and that was how I realized that my fatigue and muscle weakness were not because I was severely under-eating. It was because of the SIBO, which was crazy because at the time, it made me respond to my symptoms extremely strongly. And I thought that I was more malnourished than I was because I had the brain fog, the extreme fatigue, the extreme muscle weakness. I'm so tired of feeling sick all the time every day, to be honest with you guys. It's literally every day. Like, there's not a single day where I don't have symptoms. There's not a single day where I'm able to eat like normally or to actually like feed myself what I need, which is very frustrating. I would love to eat like 3 tacos and just like get that nutrition in, but I can like barely eat one and I feel so sick. Focus on resting because I just can never seem to get enough rest ever. So I'm probably just gonna lay on the couch the rest of the night. I still have a headache like from this morning. My entire body hurts whenever I try to move. What the heck? Like, what the heck is wrong with me? It was just the level of exhaustion, and I would get sore all the time too, sore from really basic things. Like, I remember being sore for an entire week from one of Robert's and my walks around the blocks. And I thought, oh my gosh, I must not be eating enough because of my other issues that I have with my stomach and my intestines. Like, you know, I must be under eating a whole bunch. That's why I'm so sore. Like, I was imagining that my muscles were just melting away and becoming atrophied. That's how I thought it was. But it was just the level of energy loss from SIBO was just crazy. And so I think it made me a bit more dramatic talking to doctors and talking to family members, like how can they not see how sick I am? Because I felt so sick.
I'm worried that they might invalidate my symptoms because I haven't lost weight.
They weighed me and I was heavier than I have been in other appointments, and I was just like, frick, because now they're extra not gonna believe.
It also, because of the sugar cravings and the fact that I was really sedentary while I had SIBO and my weight gain, made people think that I was being overly dramatic, because people and doctors were seeing that I was gaining weight and thinking, oh my gosh, like she's saying that eating is so hard for her, she's saying that eating causes her so much pain, but here she is, you know, gaining weight, and here she is eating sugar, and here she is, you know, seeming fine and looking fine, that whole you don't look sick thing. I was not under eating in terms of calories at that time, but what I was eating was limited because of my pain, and you know, I definitely wasn't eating optimally. I definitely wasn't getting optimal nutrition, so that was a real thing that was happening, but it was the SIBO causing all the fatigue and muscle weakness. And I do want to put this into context, how extreme the muscle weakness and fatigue was. It was hard for me to walk around the block. There were times that Robert and I went out for a short walk and I would be so tired and my muscles would be so weak that Robert would have to get a car and pick me up off the side of the road, because I was like, I physically cannot walk down the street to get back home.
This exhaustion and soreness is so bad. Like, it hurts to lift my arms, it hurts to move my legs, like every muscle in my body hurts, and it's just from like doing daily activities.
Standing in line to buy groceries was extremely painful. Like, I would have trouble standing to buy groceries. I was so fatigued.
So I am in my car in the Target parking lot, and I will be honest, I feel like I just did a massive workout. My entire body hurts, and all I did was walk through the Target and buy 2 things and then like check them out, and I feel so tired and weak. Like, this illness is taking everything from me, like in terms of my strength and my health.
I became very sedentary because of the fatigue. So there was this one time in July, and I made a vlog about it, where I tried to go to the gym and work out.
I just really need to build my muscles back. Like, I'm just so weak and it terrifies me. And honestly, I've been avoiding working out, and I kept thinking that I was gonna get better and then be able to eat more and start working out more, but I don't think that's going to happen for me. So I think I need to work with where I am now.
And you know, I couldn't even lift a 15-pound weight with both hands because of how weak my muscles were. I could barely do any exercises. And then after that one workout at the gym that I did in July, while I still had SIBO and still had a lot of bloating and other symptoms from it, after one workout, one like 30-minute workout, doing the lowest weights of everything at the gym, I was sore for an entire week, and I felt ill from how sore I was. Basically laid on the couch and was spent for an entire week after that one workout that I did in July. And that was a week where I was in between jobs, so I wasn't working. So I literally worked out on like Monday, laid out on the couch the rest of the week. Done.
Arms are starting to hurt. It's just so problematic. But I'm extremely sore, as you can probably tell from the fact that I'm recording this laying down. The worst is my legs. The muscles in my legs hurt even though I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just laying here not using my legs and they still hurt. So I've never been like this sore ever. I was really, really sick last night. I was just so, like, it was painful how nauseous I was. And I also just felt very, very, very sick. It reminded me, honestly, and this was really scary for me, it reminded me of like when I used to have my eating disorder and I would like do a super intense workout and then like not eat, and like how ill I would feel from that. It reminded me of that, which was terrifying.
Now it's not that hard for Robert and I to go for, you know, long walks every day for about an hour. We walk every day for about an hour, which helps my motility, problems that I deal with from my stomach disorder and my intestinal disorder. It helps my mental health. You know, I love going for walks. And Robert and I do that now pretty effortlessly. We walk every evening when I have, you know, days that I'm off work, or on weekends. We walk maybe twice a day. A lot of times on weekends, we go for 2 long walks. But when I had SIBO, I would go to work and mostly sit, and then I would come home and just lay on the couch because I would be so exhausted from just having been at work. I would just lay out on the couch. On weekends, I would not do anything. I rarely saw my friends and family. I stopped going to church. My family would invite us over to dinner and things like that, and I wouldn't have the energy to see my family. So for months, I wasn't seeing my family because I felt too sick. And once the SIBO cleared up, you know, as it started clearing up in the winter of last year, I started seeing my family again, going to dinners, and it just kind of these social events just kind of fell into place, and it felt sort of effortless to leave the house and go do these things. But while I had SIBO, it was excruciatingly hard to do anything besides go to work and come home and like be exhausted. It was so different. Or like there's just so much that I do now that I have energy for. I spend so much more time with friends and family. I go to church sometimes now. I go to dinner with my parents a lot, meet my parents, you know, different places and do different activities. Robert and I go out more in Durham and Chapel Hill on the weekends and do fun activities. Like I do so much more now. I have so much more energy to do so much more, and I'm eating way less than I did when I had SIBO. And so I think that puts into perspective for me how bad my brain fog, muscle weakness, and fatigue was when I had SIBO, because my life was so limited. I was barely doing anything aside from feeling sick from the SIBO when I had SIBO at its worst. Since I've cured it, I have such a more full life, even being limited in the amount of calories I can eat a day because of my stomach disorder and my intestinal disorder. And so that's sort of like, wow, it makes me feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize how much SIBO was taking over my life symptom-wise. And I cannot imagine having SIBO on top of how bad my stomach disorder and my intestinal disorder currently are. Because my stomach disorder and my intestinal disorder are a lot worse than they were when I had SIBO. But at the same time, I feel so much better than when I had SIBO. So do not discount SIBO. Do not think that it is a mild illness, because it is a really serious illness. People that have it, it can affect their life in this myriad of different ways. I mean, my life was so limited when I had SIBO. It was just wild to see how much our life opened back up once my SIBO went away in November and December of last year. So never discount how bad SIBO is, because it is, I would never want to have it again. I'm terrified of getting it again, and I'm so grateful that I did get rid of my SIBO. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for providing insight into the way that SIBO really affected me and the way that SIBO can really affect other people. And stay tuned for part 2, where I talk about the ways that I got rid of my SIBO. I have a lot to say about how I got rid of it, and I think it's important to shed light on the fact that I did not do a restrictive diet to cure my SIBO, and I want that information to be out there, because I think a lot of people think that they have to starve themselves to cure their SIBO or only eat like 5 foods, and in my experience, that's not true. I know a lot of people have different experiences. Sadly, there's never a one-size-fits-all for curing SIBO, but I do want to share my experience in the next video so that you can see that, you know, there are other ways to get rid of SIBO besides just cutting out a ton of foods. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.